purpose of this activity is to use titration to figure out the concentration of my vinegar sample. Now if you notice on the label, it says it's a 5% acetic acid solution. So we know what our expected result should be. We should have a 5% volume by volume concentration of acetic acid. As far as the actual titration goes, I'll get 10 milliliters of the vinegar using my pipette, put it in the flask. Using my sodium hydroxide, which I know the concentration of, I will put that in my burette. So I added my 10 milliliters of vinegar into my flask. Now I'm going to add a few drops of my indicator. So you'll notice there's no color change yet. That's because the vinegar is still acidic. The color change happens once my pH turns from acidic to basic. So right on the pH of 7 mark, that's when we'll start to see a color change. To fill the burette, a couple things you want to make sure. The spout right now is open, so when it's in line with the burette, that means it's open. So before you start filling it, make sure it's closed. So I've put my burette in my clamp and I've lowered it down so that it's easier for me to pour in the top. So you want to make sure your funnel is clean before you do this. And one thing to notice is I'm right at the top. You don't have to be right at 0. In fact, right now it doesn't even matter if I'm at 0 because, take a look down here. There's a big air bubble in my spout. I need to get rid of that first. So I'm going to put a small beaker underneath here. I'm going to open the tap, let it run until the bubble is gone, and then I can set up my burette and get going on the titration. So after I got rid of the air bubble, we're going to take a look at the initial burette reading. We're looking at the bottom of the meniscus. So it's in between 4 and 5. Let's be more precise. I would say 4.7. Now it might be a little bit more than 4.7, and the second number after the decimal we have to estimate. So it looks like it's right on the line actually. Looks like it's exactly 4.70. So I'm going to estimate 4.70. If you think it's a little bit more, you could estimate 4.71, or if you think it's a little bit less, you could estimate 4.69. But it looks like the initial burette reading is 4.70. And now, the other thing that we have to talk about is the setup down here. You'll notice that I have the spout of the burette inside the flask. It's not going to be up above, up here. It's down inside the flask, and the reason I do that is to prevent splashing from happening. I've got my vinegar in the flask with my phenolphthalein indicator, and I put a white sheet of paper underneath. I often do that because it helps me see the color change better. So I'm just going to start adding my sodium hydroxide. Now you'll notice it turned pink a little bit. If you swirl it around though, the pink color disappears. So we're going to keep adding sodium hydroxide until the pink color stays. Once the pink color starts to stay for a longer period of time, slow down your titration and just go a little bit at a time. It's okay to go drop by drop when you're close. Okay, looks like I've reached my end point. The pink color's staying. So let's take a look at my final burette reading. Well, it's between 13 and 14. Let's be more precise. 13.69, I would estimate. So you have your initial burette reading and you have your final burette reading. Refocus here. So now you can determine the volume of sodium hydroxide that was added. Now, normally you would do this a few times to make sure that you're getting a consistent result. Just for the sake of this video, I'm just going to show one trial.